So I just had you watch a childhood favorite of mine, 1954's Them with an exclamation point, a movie about giant ants, irradiated giant ants that get enormous out in the desert, and some scientists and military types must scramble to put down the giant ants before they destroy the world.
This was my first time watching, obviously. I really, really enjoyed it. I liked it a lot. I liked it more than I thought I was going to like it. I went into this movie thinking it was going to be a typical monsters are attacking and there's like military guys all lined up in a city and they're just blowing up terrible giant models.
Right.
But it wasn't that at all.
Get the antennae!
It was so awesome how it even just opens. The opening alone is just, I was like, oh, this is going to be different. This is going to be different than what I was expecting.
Hey, little girl! Little girl!
That first half an hour is actually a really gripping mystery. Even though you know it's going to be eventually giant ants because you know what the movie is, the way it unfolds, the pacing and the way it unfolds and the way they're just following these clues, they're following a mystery, it's very procedural in a way that you don't expect.
Yeah, I almost feel foolish saying that I enjoyed the movie because it was logical, being it's about killing giant ants that, you know. And I like that a lot. I knew it was going to be giant ants, but it was cool to watch it from the point of view, the police officer Ben's head and stuff, and trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Like, this is so, you know, and that was a lot of fun. They did a really good job.
But that whole opening mystery section is really well done. It's an intriguing puzzle that they're unraveling as you go along.
Sure no traffic accident, was it?
This wasn't caved in, it was caved out.
In the beginning, when you see the little girl walking, I was like, this is cool, because you see the little girl and she's like confused in the middle of the desert without her parents. Ben, the police officer, finds these two things in the busted out trailer. I didn't know what it was, so I'm like, oh, he found something. And then he goes and he goes back in the car, he finds a girl, and he places the broken head of the doll on it and the fabric, and I'm like, oh shit. I just thought that was really clever how they did that. Like, you know, it's just show don't tell.
This movie came during an era when monster movies were very popular, and the giant monster thing was starting to ramp up during this period. In fact, I believe this is the same year that the original Godzilla came out in Japan. And of course, this is also, and this movie in particular is sort of emblematic of paranoia and fear of what nuclear power and what the atomic age might actually bring. This really could have easily been, like you said, what you expected it to be, just basically big monsters romp around, lots of gunshots, and it's basically just a monster smash stuff up movie, which there would be nothing wrong with that. That could be pretty cool.
Right.
But it instead, it actually ends up being more of, like you were pointing out, they try to ground it in as much reality as they can. They get into the science of ants and what might the queens do and where might they relocate and what would it really mean if ants could get this large. The actual action and monster elements of this are probably a lot more subdued than you would think.
I also like that there was some humor thrown into it when the doctor shows up, who, by the way, no one can convince me otherwise. A whole total ripoff of the Jurassic Park doctor.
Strike that. Reverse it.
Dr. Medford? Huh? Are you Dr. Medford?
Yes. No need to shout.
Yeah, totally.
It's so obvious. It's almost absurd. Like, I was like, oh, here's the scene where they're flying in a helicopter and he's having trouble with his headset, you know, and he can't.
Delightful scene.
If you finish, say over and out.
But she knows I'm through talking.
I know she does, Doctor. It's a rule, though. You gotta say it.
A lot of good your rules are going to do is if we don't locate
Over and out.
Oh, now you're happy.
Yeah, and that guy is so charming. He manages to carry some scenes that probably should have dragged the whole movie down. I think in particular when they go to Washington, D.C., and he basically shows them an educational film on ants, but he's just sort of so delightful and fun to watch.
Here, for instance, is one such specimen that got himself trapped in amber, which we know is at least that old.
When they're going into the hive, I was like, yes, you're going to go down into the freaking ant hive. And then even at the end where they're like fighting them in the sewers, I guess, basically.
The LA sewers, the LA canals, yeah.
Yes, that's what it should be. Like seeing the Jeeps
But thanks.
driving through those scenes and then, yeah, it was so much better than what I thought it was going to end up being, you know?
I gotta tell you, the scene, roughly halfway through the movie, when they find the first ant's nest and they go in after gassing it with flamethrowers and stuff, that just has stuck with me since childhood.
It was creepy seeing it for the first time in my 40s.
Flamethrowers, always awesome, 100% of the time. Special effects wise, even though it was awarded for its special effects, I don't know that it holds up as good as your childhood memory does. Like that first attack when it sort of comes over the hill at the very end when they find the three young queens and they're all overlooking them and surrounding them. As a kid, when it's seared into your memory, it just feels so realistic.
Yes, this is the egg chamber, the same as we found in New Mexico. The job will be done when these are destroyed.
They were smart the way that they did it because it made you feel claustrophobic stuck with them all the time. Like if the ants were out in the open and you had to fight them, you would just be like, oh, you're just bombing them. But because they were shoving you in there with them.
I wonder how much the decision to have most of the action and most of the special effects take place inside ant tunnels was a practical one, just knowing that they could fudge it a little more and get away with things.
Yeah. It's like like what they did with Jaws. It's like that same sort of mentality.
Most of the monster stuff we've watched has been stop motion animation. It's been miniatures and so on. But I think this is first we've done, or one of the only times that we've touched on that kind of old school style of like building a big styrofoam monster. They don't always hold up great, but just basically not putting it all on screen at once, sort of Jaws style. They get away with it, and it works.
All the characters are great. Right from the beginning, I loved the cop, Ben. I thought he was awesome.
And one thing that actually kind of surprised me on this viewing that I didn't recall from past viewings is just how much kind of patter there is.
Hi, Rich. Hi. How are the kids? Hi, thanks. Another one on the way. Oh, good for you.
It made it feel like this was an authentic small town out in the desert in California.
My only complaint is that Ben died. And I felt it was unnecessary. I understand he died saving the children, but he didn't need to die.
Ben, how about the kids, Ben?
The amount that you like Ben, not you, I mean in general, like can actually be a little surprising because he plays the kind of character that you wouldn't necessarily like. He seems a little rough around the edges, and instead he comes off like a stand-up dude.
I think why you end up liking him, at least for me, was in the beginning because he comes off rough, but when he finds the girl, when he's sitting in the car with her, he's kind of like cradling her, and then she falls asleep on his lap. You're like, oh, he's like, he cares.
Yeah, he's a stand-up dude.
He's the guy from Shawshank Redemption. He's the old man that hangs himself. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
There was that one scene, the Air Force guy thinks he sees a UFO, but he says it looks like an ant, like a flying ant, the shape of a flying ant.
Yes, which I really loved. I love that whole.
Yeah, that's such a great scene because they think he's crazy, so they send him to a hospital for mental patients.
Well, I don't know what else to call them. They were shaped like ants, maybe 15 feet long and had wings like a fly or something.
But because he has vital information, they make him stay in there.
Yeah, they're like, keep this guy in there.
Yeah, and you sort of agree with him. You understand because you're on the inside, but it's sort of screwed up because he's like, please get me out of here. I don't belong here. I'm not crazy. And he's like, yeah, we'll get you out of here. And then he leaves and he's like, don't let him out until this is all like blown over.
There's also another little bit that I like about that little side plot. This was like the dawn of UFOs and flying saucers. I really love the idea that this pilot saw flying ants, and in his head, he just defaulted to the idea of like, it's just a weird looking UFO. It didn't even occur to him that they really were just giant ants. Yeah, I don't think that you could do that now because people would be like, well, why the hell didn't he just think it was a giant monster? But at the time, since flying saucers were so, such a thing,
Like, why is he saying it was a UFO shaped like an ant? Like, that seems so absurd, but you explaining it that way makes sense because that was the time. It was the time and era of the UFO paranoia.
Legitimate mainstream newspapers were publishing stories about crashed UFOs and UFO sightings and flying saucer sightings. And so him sort of making that mistake feels very much of the era, which again, the concept overall is also very much of the era. That kind of paranoia of what did we really unleash by testing these bombs and creating these bombs. And that came up in a lot of movies from this period, especially science fiction and horror movies. This one, I think, handled it better than a lot.
We're both Cold War kids, so we grew up with how many movies were based around, the Russians invading.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. I wasn't sure how well it would fly for you. Kind of a classic of the era, and it's one of my childhood favorites. I was kind of looking forward to revisiting it, especially for the month of Halloween. So I figured I'd have you along for the ride.
I thought it was great. And if you're a monster movie fan and you haven't seen this, you have to see it. I really honestly liked it a lot. Like, I think it's one of my favorite ones you've given me.
So if you guys have watched them and if you know them and you like them, make sure you talk about it in the comments below. We'd love to chat with you about it. And I'm by no means a full experienced expert on monster movies of the era. So if you have a favorite, please recommend it down in the comments, because you never know, there might be one that I haven't seen and certainly some that Tig hasn't seen. So throw in all your favorites of 50s and 60s monster movies down there. We'd love to hear about it.
It is time for some spooky nonsense. Okay, I got 3 on the list and I'm going to go with this one. It's a movie I watch every season. One of my favorite Halloween-ish movies since I was a kid. Eric, you will be watching the 1983 By the Twitching of My Thumbs, Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Something wicked this way comes.
Oh, fan, this is a great choice. I'm really glad you picked this. Very few authors have influenced me more than Bradbury, so to watch an adaptation of his work is definitely going to be delightful.
Yes, I'm so glad that you didn't see it. I was Tig.
I'm still Eric. Same as it ever was.
Same as it ever was. Thanks for hanging out at Movie Club. And the days go by.